So again, we have the large people and the tiny people on the same plane. If they were to have pushed this up higher on the picture plane, that forces more space between the people who are in the foreground and people in the background. So generally, the height, the level of where things are at on the page indicate whether they're in the foreground, middle ground, or background. Typically, things in the foreground are lower on the picture plane, and things that are in the middle ground are towards the middle of the page, and things that are in the background are typically up higher. And we can see this in some of our pictures later. So let's see, perspective. Make sure you write this down. Pause it if you need to. Perspective is a way to create the illusion of depth in 3-dimension on a 2-dimensional surface. Types of perspective include 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point linear perspective, as well as atmospheric perspective. Here is Filippo Brunelleschi. He is attributed to discovering perspective, and that's in quotations. What actually happened was there was a lot of people at that time who were talking about and researching perspective. He just happened to be the first to actually write it down and document it. So that's why he got credit. But he also suggested that objects shrink in size according to their position and distance from the eye. Okay, so I want you to pause this and make sure you draw these things and label them, this being the horizon line. Pause that and write that down. This being the vanishing point. Write that down. And then I want you to draw this. So you can place a piece of paper over the top of this and then write down this definition and make sure you draw this 1-point linear perspective model. And then the same thing for the 2-point perspective. This is how you would draw 2-point perspective. Just lay a sheet of paper over the top and trace it to help you get accuracy. And this is 3-point perspective. Bird's eye view, so from the top looking down. And also a worm's eye view, so placing a paper over this and drawing it upside down from the ground looking up from a worm's eye perspective. Do not draw this unless you really want extra credit, but this is an example of a worm's eye perspective. Okay, atmospheric perspective, super important. Objects further away become smaller, less detailed, and faded, just like the giant children terrorizing tiny children in that forced perspective photo that we looked at earlier. So this is an example of what happens. You know, things that are really dark and light in the foreground start to gray down as you go further back. You can see the snow caps on the mountains in the foreground, but then they kind of fade away into the background and lose that detail. And this happens because of our poor human eyesight, as well as debris and pollutants in the air that filter light and color so that we aren't able to see them as clearly as things that are up close. Okay, and then proportions. Proportion is the size of an object in relation to the objects around it. So for instance, the length of this dog's head would be similar to the length between the front of the chest of the cat and the back of the cat, or from the tail end of the bunny to the nose of the bunny. So we're just comparing parts of one animal to parts of another animal so that we can get